And gentlemen, welcome to this stream here. This is Odin Knight, formerly of the show. It's, what am I looking at as time-wise here? 12:20 a.m. on Wednesday, November 21st, 2018. It's been a crazy year for me between work projects and school. And I have not had much time in gaming, especially in Star Trek Online. But this is something where got off of work and saw some things that were going on over at Reddit, and I decided, you know what, it's been a while since I've been quiet. This is something that I should speak on here. Not just for what is being discussed within the Star Trek Online community, but within the gaming ecosystem and in society at large, because this can be extrapolated to society at large. Long story short, Reddit STOBuilds Moderators have decided that in a show of protest, they were going to temporarily close their doors, so to speak, and not grant the community access to STOBuilds. Now, I found this out because I typically get in-game or emails or mails to my account where someone will ask about builds, torpedo builds specifically. I'll see that in Facebook groups. I'll see that in my general email for those people who have it there. The STO Tech Trek Discord would also have some posts in there every once in a while. So I figured, okay, you know what, let me go link them over to STOBuilds and then see if there's any other modified posts from Dead Cthulhu or the Torpedo Guy, as they are more active in STO than I am. When I found out that I could not get access to STOBuilds, I decided to look and find out exactly why this was the case. And when I started to read their message, it wasn't quite clear on the first read, but in the second read, I was able to read between the lines, and I understood what they were trying to do. As someone who has both supported Cryptic and criticized them for some of their actions and antics that has happened in the past, I can see where the Reddit mods were coming from. And I support their actions. Even though it may not have been succinct and the initial message was not clear, which is crucial for something like this. I understand that their underlying reasoning for doing this is good, and it needs to happen. The community needs to feel uncomfortable enough to know what is happening. The status quo needs to be disrupted enough to know not only what is happening, but they need to wake up and say, hey, look, you should have a higher standard for the product that you are supporting. Whether you're a free-to-play member that's contributing your game time in there to get other people who are paying a sense of community and a sense of population, or even if you're a paying customer or client, you should demand more from a game or any sort of digital product. Just because it's a digital product does not excuse it from being incomplete. Now, if you are playing this game and you are getting a complete product, you should support it in one fashion or another. And that's part of the unwritten contract between a developer, a studio, and the player base as a whole. You know, you have the written contract there where if you're paying a subscription fee or you're supporting via microtransactions, you know, here's my money, give me the digital good, make sure that everything that is advertised that is what I'm getting, and here's the money for it. I get that. I understand that. That's there. The unwritten contract is in a free-to-play game, MMO or otherwise, you find other ways to be able to support it so that that product can exist and the people who are creating that product can have a decent livelihood at the very least. I am under the impression that gamers are getting used to substandard releases, and they're being complacent about it. This does not apply just to STO. This is just across the board. This is a new trend that's going on right now. You know, stuff like this we would see in alpha and beta releases. You know, repeated bugs that show up on different builds. Something that has X tooltip shows up with Y results that doesn't match up with what X tooltip is. That sort of thing. Performance issues. This is all stuff that should be squared away. Also, communication between the studio, the developer community, the community managers, and the player base as a whole needs to be improved. And not just improved for a moment, but improve and maintain at least that level of improvement. At least. If not continually improving. That has not happened. We see the ups and downs. It's almost like a sine wave. You'll see good communication, really bad communication. Good communication again, really bad communication. Almost like a cycle. And I think that cycle is starting to frustrate a lot of people now within STO and overall within the gaming community. It still hasn't hit critical mass yet for players. So the majority of players will still be, oh, what's this ruckus? Oh, they're protesting about this. Oh, wow. Well, this is uncomfortable. Yeah, but I can deal with this here because I'm still having a little bit of entertainment here. Whatever. I'm just going to go back to what I'm doing here. And all this will blow over in about a week and it'll be forgotten and things will go back to the status quo. And it probably will. And that's the sad part. And when I tell people that if you want to see a good example of how a society will react, one area that you can look at and start playing around with some variables in order to see how the society will react is in the gaming community. Tweak a couple variables here and there and see how people will react. Not do it in politics. Do it in a social environment where you're dealing with same number of people, similar circumstances, but put into the real world instead of the digital world and see how they react. You'll almost see a mirror effect. More or less a similar response. There'll be some people be upset, some people be vocal, some people will protest. If the protest is actually justified and right, yeah, it may get enough people to come on board initially. There may be some steam or momentum in driving forward what needs to be said. There'll be some attention paid to it. There'll be some concessions made if the point is strong enough. And then, depending on how people are, if it's a grievance that is just that huge for the player base, they will react. Otherwise, the status quo will continue on and things will go back to the old norm prior to the protest or whatever upset the system for the short term. And we see that today, at least in the U.S. politics. We see a small amount of people being zealots in trying to get this change, whatever change it is. And the majority of people looking around and saying, okay, well, we're being told that these zealots over here are just out of control. And we're not going to look at what their cause is because it's simpler and easier for us to be able to look at what they're doing their immediate action and say, oh, they're out of control. Oh, who cares about them? Who cares about their cause? Who cares about what they're actually making a noise over? I got my little mundane stuff to do, and this is causing me to pay enough attention. And while I'm uncomfortable right now, I like to go back to the status quo where I'm a little bit more comfortable than where I was. Even though I'm not satisfied, I can at least be comfortable in my mild uncomfortableness that I got used to. And I know I'm expanding on this a lot more than what has happened within STO. But I see this a lot in the workplace. I see this a lot in the local communities, in the government. I see this a lot in the state of Florida, and I see this a lot in the national level as well. And it's the same thing happening here. You got a lot of people complaining about a legitimate complaint and a legitimate concern where there are issues that need to be resolved. They have not been resolved for years. There are some things that have improved slightly, and then after they've improved, they then regress back to where they were prior to the complaint being made. And for whatever reason it's happening, that needs to stop. And I'm of the opinion that keeps happening within STO and within the gaming community, and then within society at large, because people get accustomed to that lower substandard. If it's slow enough, they'll get used to it. And while I applaud the STO mods for a very bold and brazen action to get attention to something like this, I feel that there's just not going to be enough of a critical mass at this time to warrant any sort of lasting change. Now, I could be wrong, but unfortunately, history has shown otherwise. There were enough people who were more upset about how it was done than why it was done. And for the most part, it's because they don't want to take the time out to think. The method, while in my opinion is a little bit crude, I still applaud them for it because it's also gutsy. And sometimes you need to make that gutsy and crude move, not only to get attention, but to be able to start that agent of change. It may not be pretty sometimes, but it can be effective. And so I wouldn't say that how they did it is wrong. I may disagree with the fine details on it, but as far as shock value is concerned, as far as making it uncomfortable for people to say, hey, this is something that's been helping the gaming community and helping Cryptic out by filling a void with the lack of knowledge and lack of consistency, their own mechanics and their own nomenclature, to help the players feel less frustrated with their product that they're putting out, to help the players avoid the pitfalls within their own product, to stop people from quitting before level 25. Yes, STOBuilds is helping Cryptic out. And to have that temporarily disabled for 7 hours cause enough of an uproar to get people to pay attention. They may not like it, but they paid attention. Now I hope that the Cryptic STO community manager is conveying a lot of the issues that have been plaguing STO for the past 5+ years properly over to the dev team. And the dev team is listening and will take action on some of the critical issues that are there. I understand that Cryptic Studios needs to make money. I understand that the devs need to be able to put out a product and meet the major timelines there. I get that. I understand that. As a project manager, I understand what it takes to be able to put out a product on deadline, on budget, meet these certain metrics, hit your milestones, get your product out. You also need to take care of all the other issues with bugs, with feature development, with support, with quality assurance and testing. You want to make sure you deliver on time a quality product. Or if not on time, have a damn good reason why you're delaying it and put out a quality product. Because that will inspire trust and loyalty to your client base. And that will get you money in the long run. Lots of it. Lots of it. May not make the quarter metrics, but year profits and 2-year profits and 5-year profits will start going up. And that's what you want in the long run. So having segments of your player base being disgruntled because there are things that are detracting from the gameplay. And we're not talking high-end stuff. High-end DPSers will enjoy some of these bugs or sidestep them. We're talking the general player base here that will get frustrated because some things aren't working as advertised. Or even when you're selling a product and it has this label here and your method of fixing it is, oh, instead of making the code work to match what we were selling, we're just going to change the label on it after people have bought it. I think that's bait and switch. That's not good. That's definitely not good. And yes, we're going to keep on bringing that up because it's relevant. So I applaud the STOBuild mods for doing what they did. It's something that was necessary, in my opinion. Very necessary to show, hey, look, yes, here's a wealth of information that a lot of different communities link to and become reliant upon. These are the people who have contributed to reverse engineering the mechanics, deriving the numbers, creating builds, not just the cookie cutter stuff, but also the more exotic ones, even the unique ones, and saying, hey, here's how you can make it effective while enjoying what you want to do with the game, while having fun with it, without being frustrated that something you're doing here is not working because you don't understand some cryptic mechanic, no pun intended. Sometimes you have to be uncomfortable with a situation that is not ideal. And then be ready to be able to make the change so that it will become as close to ideal as possible. That's all I have to say on that. Now, for some of the folks out there who kept asking about torpedo builds and how you can make a different torpedo build, blah, 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 yakety schmack, I did something a little bit fun here, which I'm going to later on put in STOBuilds. Yes. It's the Debuffer support torpedo build here. In short, I'm going to be running the Delphic, 3-piece House Martok, which in this case here, I want this high yield and spread will leave a minus 20 damage resistance debuff on the target for 6 seconds. It's the damage resistance debuff rating. Now, you're saying, oh, that's not going to be much on there. But when you apply this plus Delphic's own debuff on there, not the reverb, sorry. It is the, where's the minus debuff on here? There we go. Minus 10 all damage resistance rating for 10 seconds. And that's per Torp under high yield. because we'll be firing this under concentrate firepower and spamming high yields like crazy. So we have Delphic is going to be putting a damage resistance rating debuff on your target. House Martok will be doing the same thing. Resonant Transphasic. Just the Torp itself is all we need. It also will apply under high yield, -10 all damage resistance for 8 seconds on the target. So you could do high yield spam on one, high yield spam from the other one, high yield spam from the third one there. And there's your damage resistance rating dropping on that target. Throw in attack pattern beta on it. And throw in cold-hearted. Which in this case here, after activating Aux to Bat or any pilot bridge officer ability, any energy weapons that you fire will apply a damage resistance rating debuff to the target foe, while also reducing the turn and max power, blah, blah, blah. Pretty much what we're using it for is a damage resistance debuff on here. So we have a 1/2 Aux to Bat build with our Doffs. In this case here, 2 projectile weapon officers. If we need to, we can drop the emergency call on officer if you have it. We can get a third one in here. That way you have a much higher chance of being able to throw out torpedoes. If you need a maneuverability, get this one here. If you don't need a maneuverability as much, 3 projectile weapon officers are ideal. That way you can spam these Transphasics and the Delphic torpedo. These have a decently long recharge time, and you want to minimize the amount of gaps that you have in firing all these torps. You literally want to have 1, 2, 3 firing on them. Back over to the build here. I have the Terran Task Force Disruptor Beam 4 because, again, debuff and disruptor. And I can do either 2-piece or 3-piece on this. Whether I want to keep the Torp or not, I kept the Torp because I can. The 3-piece throws out some extra Torps. Again, this is not going to be a high DPS build, even though I got 98k off of this thing. Not even trying. This will actually start debuffing your target quite immensely. Deflector could be anything. You could have a support deflector on there. If you want to do something else, you can. I put the elite for crit hit, crit D. 2-piece adapted Mako. You could also do the competitive engine for a lot more speed whenever you're activating any tac. Please be sure to get the one with tac on it. Wait, right here. This one right here. Prevailing innervated impulse engines. Yeah, whenever you activate your any firing mode bridge officer ability, which in this case torpedo spreader high yield, you move faster, you turn faster. Very useful, although that stagger step is kind of crazy. It also activates off of what I have in my binds here. Come on, where are you? Why aren't you moving? Fine, don't move. On my other binds, wow, there's a lot of lag on that one. Also have fire at will as well. So that's a firing mode that's going to activate. And that'll also help me increase my speed and turn off of that. If I want to have more cooldown reduction for my bridge officer abilities, I can pop the temporal phase overcharge core. Shield again for the 2-piece adapted Mako. Again, not necessary if you're doing this for a support build, but I want to add a little bit more damage to my Torps as well. The Omni in the rear for House Martok. Don't need to maximize this at all. All this is acting as a debuffer application for Cold-Hearted. Same thing with this beam. This is part of the 3-piece. Not necessary. The ferrofluid to help your Torps fire smoothly, and the array is more than enough for the 2-piece set bonus. See previous video on that one. This one right here, the Morphogenic Polaron Energy Torpedo, you get that from a mission reward. The 3-piece is nice for increasing your damage for your Torp spread and high yields, especially when you're running a fire will for increased critical chance. Your fire will is your support firing mode, so to speak. So I'll give you increased crit chance. And then whenever you're activating torpedo spread, torpedo high yield, or any of your mine patterns, you get this. Alpha and beta. Okay, I thought there was a mine pattern delta. I could be wrong. Very wrong. This works very nicely for torpedoes since a lot of our buffs are in Cat 1 land. Increasing that damage range will help make our Cat 2 contribute more. There's a whole bunch of math behind that one there, where Jay gave me a comparison formula to where I can compare something like a tachyokinetic, the crit D on that one, to a Cat 1 boost from this one right here. 25% projectile damage is worth about 12.5% crit D for specific build configurations. Now, obviously, you have to change the formula around with different values if you're changing your build. But if you increase your Cat 1 levels for Torps because of the damage range is that large, your Cat 2 levels are going to contribute more to that damage range. But since we're dealing with finite slots, we have to decide whether increasing our Cat 1 will be worth more than increasing our Cat 2. And in some cases, this 25% Cat 1 damage will be greater than the 12.5% Cat 2 damage. That was just a little tangent going off of this here. This is not necessary for the build. This is just adding extra torps to fly out all over the place. I have seen this apply beta, which is unusual, but okay. Part of the 3-piece bonus for House Martok. Again, for a little quick reminder for that. This is the one where it adds a minus 20 damage resistance debuff to the target. Domino, bonus all damage. That is nice. And the bonus, the recharge speed bonus for bridge officers. Definitely nice. Haven't seen much on the 100% recharge speed for torpedo weapons, but I haven't been testing much on this anyway. Eventually I will. So we'll see. DPRM, dynamic power redistributor module. Very expensive on the Fred side. If you're on the Romulan side or Klingon Romulan, pick this up. It's cheap. It's probably your best DPS console you're going to get, or one of the best out there. Do it. This is the 2-piece for the Delphic. That gives me a little bit more crit hit and crit D. And of course, I'm running exploiters on here. And the 2-piece for the morphogenic efficiency. Again, just tactical recharge on for Firewheel, Beam Overload, Scatter Volley, Rapid Fire, Torpedo Spread, and Torpedo High Yield. That's pretty much what I want. Firewheel, Torpedo Spread, and Torpedo High Yield. Firewheel is going to apply beta plus trigger plus work with Ox the Bat for Cold Hearted. That way I can debuff my targets, and I can start applying beta to the targets as well before the torpedoes hit. Also apply Chemosite, because I have that bastard somewhere around here, right there, and right there. And no, the Chemosite stacking bug has been fixed. I just have these here because I macro this to apply first, this one to apply second, and it works with TAC Team 2. I have TAC Team 2 buffing before I apply this, and then Firewall kicks off. Concentrated Firepower 3 is there. This is Scramble Sensors is there in order to be able to trigger this ability right here. Control Countermeasures, which will give me a bonus damage for my weapons, blah, blah, blah. And all this is the fun stuff that's normal. You'll see it in the previous video. Only changes from the previous video that I'm shown here. Reverberation, you get that, I believe, from the Amari. Has a debuff, stacking debuff, and whenever a stacking debuff counter. Sorry, whenever that counter reaches a certain threshold, and it rolls a chance to say, hey, you know what? You get a stacking 10% chance for each counter. If it rolls and is successful, shields drop for a short amount of time, and it's very, very Very handy versus heavily shielded targets. Your Torps eat hull, and they eat them well. This one here, subspatial warheads. While this thing moves slow, if you have a buddy that grab wells a whole bunch of crap together, and you throw a high yield or transport warhead, but high yield, don't use transport warhead. You want to use a high yield, trust me. When you throw a high yield on a target, subspatial warhead starts to trigger, and it moves slowly. It's like a big wave. And you see that crescent wave moving through all the targets where the target is. And it does a lot of damage against a lot of clustered enemies. So if you put CF on one target, you fire a high yield there, and you use tab target to hit another target with the next high yield that comes off of that, you got two subspatial warheads moving in and just crashing through them like waves from a tsunami crashing against a beach. It is nasty, and it does a lot of damage. The next thing you want to pick up, Context is for Kings. Get that. That is awesome. Duelist Fervor. Get that. That is also damage. Also a lot of damage going out whenever you or a teammate kill something. So the moment you start killing small targets, this kicks in. I mean, it's free DPS right here, just for a personal trait. That thing is powerful. Get it. Get it. And pretty much that's it as far as that's concerned. But hats off to Reddit. Support you guys. Really, people, the long-term effect of STO builds shutting the doors for 7 hours is people got shook up. And they realized how much other groups were reliant upon STO builds. That's your takeaway from it. Now, if you want to go and build somewhere else, that's your prerogative. That's great. You can do that if you want to. But I trust the moderators over there. Because for however many years they've had this there, they've had the power to be able to do something like this before, or completely shut the whole thing down and walk away. They understand they have a responsibility to the community to protect and preserve and curate that data. And everybody's builds. And make sure they're at least in some sort of organized fashion and a standardized template. You may not like it, but it's there. And it's in a standardized format that people can use and reliably rebuild if necessary. I'm going to continue to use them whenever I am back in the game. I've been doing my own little silent protest. But whenever somebody calls me over and say, hey, I got a question for you, or could you explain this out, or could you show me this, whatever, I come back over and help, because that's what I do. That's what a lot of other people have done before in the past. And they took the time to help me out. I'm just paying it forward. So that's that. And let's see what we can do with this thing here as far as debuffing a target before I say, you know what, I need some sleep. Even though I slept for way too long. Let's do a CCA and just knock this thing out. This is not my big mega Uba Duba build. Again, this is just a debuffer loadout. But it should be able to debuff the entity enough to make it hurt. And somebody else is going to get a nice record out of this. Major Daka, thank you for showing up. No particular tests aside from showing how much this thing will actually debuff the entity. The last ISA run I've done with this one as a support debuffer was about 205 or 209 target debuff average. So it works. It's a Torp nanny, if you want to call it that. But yeah, let's see. Loading. Remember when CCA was hard? Pepperidge Farms remembers. Pop, 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 pop. Alright, debuff, targets, blah, blah, blah. I can't even click this stuff fast enough. That's the other thing about this. The UI is all JPEG-ish and stuff ain't moving. There we go. Debuff, more debuff, more debuff. Give me more debuff. Somebody steal my concentrate firepowers. Love it. Come on. Come on. See, and this is the problem here with only 2 PWOs. Oh, somebody's got a record. Nice. 2 PWOs for me is not enough. I need to have that third one there in order to be able to fill in any sort of gaps I have with these transphasics. Alright, you. Oof. Whatever the heck that was. Fine. Oh, pain. But the stream will be temporarily interrupted while I attempt to get the logs because full screen. Blah, blah, blah. Alright, let's try this. Should be back 180k deeps off of that. Yeah, slow. Transphasics, whoop-de-doo. Target debuff 56% for the entity. Not that many torps firing out. I need CF to run. Now, SOB surprisingly started a thread over on Reddit where he was asking Cryptic to make a different version of Concentrate Firepower that would apply only to self. Because Concentrate Firepower, when applied to the target, any torpedo can take that charge, whether it's a pet torpedo or another player's torpedo or another player's pets that firing torpedoes will get that high yield one instead of you, the person applying it to the target. I've also seen where where Concentrate Firepower 1 will overwrite Concentrate Firepower 3, and therefore the player who applies Concentrate Firepower 3 loses out, as well as the rest of the team. The suggestion was twofold, combined between SOB and myself. One, have a personal version of it, whether they stick it in pilot or give it to command, whatever. And the second request would be make sure that rank 3 cannot be overwritten by a lower rank. And same thing with rank 2 to rank 1. That's pretty much it. But other than that, folks, you just all have fun out there, seriously. And be good to each other. You know, if you disagree with something, that's fine. Disagree with the idea or the concept and come up with a valid reason why you disagree with it. Some cases it's just personal opinion, and a personal opinion will apply to things that can have multiple viewpoints. Great. There's some things, though, that are just statements of fact. And you can't disagree on a fact if that's exactly what happened. So, you know, me saying I pushed this button and I fired a torpedo in the game, that's a statement of fact if that actually did happen. You don't say, well, I don't think you actually did fire that torpedo when there's evidence that I obviously did. Now, if you're saying the choice of torpedo that I fired was wrong for that instance, well, that's an opinion. And if you can back it up with data to say that that opinion is supported and valid, then yeah. Then I would be inclined to say, you know what, you're probably right. I should have fired a Delphic over here instead of the Resonant Transphasic because it would have been better for me as well as for the team. That would be a good argument. So whenever you're dealing with people who are disagreeing with a point or agreeing with a point that you disagree with, try and frame your argument in that manner. instead of saying, oh, that's dumb or that's stupid or you're stupid, whatever. Please, because that way not only will people take you seriously, typically should take you seriously, but you're also trying to pass on knowledge to other people if you have it. And if you don't have it, learn from other people first. Learn from other people who've demonstrated the knowledge, and that can be verified. And then put in your own opinion, your own knowledgeable opinion, where it applies. And just be nice to each other. Seriously. Seriously, that's the bottom line. All right, I'm out. I'm babbling. I'm tired. Y'all have a good morning. Peace.